Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I noticed that my React videos are doing better than my other videos, and so I thought I'd come back with another React video today. As a bit of background, I tend to work with newer engineers. I help out with the coding bootcamp, and so lately I've been noticing the same kinds of errors popping up. So I thought I'd talk today about 3 common errors in React and how you can avoid them. By the way, these aren't errors that like blow up your app. They're more the types of things that tend to fail silently. And so knowing why that happens is going to go a really long way in helping you avoid these things altogether. So the first error or mistake is using an item's index in a list as the key prop. And this is all over the React documentation. They tell you not to do this. And what you might see or notice if you are experiencing this kind of silent error is that your lists are not rendering in quite the way you expect. So maybe something that is supposed to come at the end of the list is at the front, or if you're going between page flips, for example, like if you're going through a paginated list, maybe something from a previous page is in the current page, stuff like that. You're going to notice that your lists are all kind of out of order and maybe out of whack in other ways as well. The reason for this is that React wants a solid and kind of dependable key. So index changes, right? As you add and remove things to arrays, their indexes will change, but React wants something that is solid and dependable in order to be able to calculate differing lists. And because of that, it makes the most sense to use something like an ID. So if you're getting a list of things back from a database, you can use the ID, or if there's a UUID, something like that that is unique to that specific item is going to help you avoid these kinds of problems. So that is using index as the key prop. You don't want to do that. The second error that isn't really an error, right? It doesn't throw an exception in the console, but it will cause bugs in your app, is using the AND operator instead of a ternary for conditional rendering. Now, Kent C. Dodds has a great blog post about this, but essentially what can happen here is if you're using the AND operator to render parts of your UI, if the length of something, for example, is 0, React will stop evaluating once it gets to that 0, because 0 and anything is going to be false, so there's no reason to continue evaluating and rendering out the other side of that AND operator. So if you're using, for example, length, like I said, or anything else that could be falsy, like for example, length being 0, then that might cause you problems. And Kent even talked about in the blog post how he shipped this bug to production at PayPal. So it's definitely something you want to avoid. And the way that you avoid it is by using a ternary instead of the AND operator. So you're going to use this conditional, whereby if the thing is true or false, depending on what your use case is, you render the component. Otherwise, you could render null, for example, and this will help you avoid all kinds of problems in the future. The third problem that I see people having a lot is not returning out of a map. So there's a slight difference between, for example, storing a list in a variable and rendering that and returning out of a map. If you're using map to, for example, render out a list of items like LI items inside of a UL, for example, you still need to return, and that is more specific to map. So as you're mapping through an array, you need to be returning JSX out of each iteration rather than just writing whatever JSX you want and leaving it there. You have to return. And so the way that this pops up a lot of times is that people will be like, hey, my list isn't rendering, or hey, my group of components isn't rendering. Oftentimes, that's because you're mapping over an array and you're not returning out of the map. So those are 3 common React errors, things that don't actually blow up your app, but they can cause some kind of weird bugs. I'd love to know, what other things do you encounter that trip you up? Was this helpful? Please feel free to leave a comment. I try to reply to everything. If you're still here at this point, you'd probably enjoy the rest of my channel, which focuses on code, self-improvement, and personal finance. Thanks so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.